books and authors and journalists. I am a huge Khushwant Singh fan, and here this is my little collection of Khushwant Singh books. Who isn't? He's the late author and writer, had so many fans. I have been lucky to meet Rahul Singh, Khushwant Singh's son, editor and journalist. Two times recently, and in the second occasion I requested him for a short interview, so where Rahul has spoken a little about himself and a lot about his dad. So sit back and enjoy this interview. So good morning, Rahul. So thank you for giving me the time and for this interview. We are in Goa, so I'm tempted to begin with a Goa question.
Yeah.
See, you covered the landmark Goa opinion poll of 1967, as a Times of India journalist.
Yeah.
And that's so many decades ago. So can you recall that historic event and the experience around it as a journalist?
Okay. When I got the mood of the people there, and everybody expected that opinion poll was basically to decide whether Goa wanted to merge with Maharashtra, because Maharashtra had been at the forefront of the Goa liberation movement, whether it wanted to merge with Maharashtra or it wanted a separate kind of identity. Now everybody thought bound to merge with Maharashtra, but I got the feeling that the Goans wanted their own. Now people don't know that Goa is not, people think it's majority Catholic, Roman Catholic. In fact, at that time, Goa was 40% Catholic and 60% Hindu, maybe some Muslims also. So people don't realize that. So anyway, to everyone's surprise, though I wrote in my reportage and articles that it looks like they will want their own identity and not merge with Maharashtra. So what did happen as a result of opinion poll is that they wanted to be a little autonomous, have their own identity, and to everybody's surprise, they voted against merging with Maharashtra.
Rahul, because of your vast experience in Indian journalism, what do you think about the present state of Indian journalism? One, and you worked with firebrand media barons like Ramnath Goenka, who never hesitated in taking on the governments of the day in his time. Yeah. So what seems to have happened now?
Well,
in journalism,
not what it used to be at my time, frankly. There are only a couple of newspapers which dare to speak out against the establishment. The others have been cowed down. The Times of India is a good example of a paper that the editorial page might be a little critical, but otherwise their news coverage is, or they don't touch any sensitive stories. The Indian Express still remains to some extent independent, and the Telegraph in Calcutta.
In Kolkata.
Yeah, but they don't bother too much because that's coming from Calcutta. It doesn't publish from Delhi. So they're worried about, and TV has become a very big major thing. And if you notice, the major TV stations have been taken over by friends of the Prime Minister. So it's not a great day for nowadays for freedom of the press in India. And if you look at the index of freedom of that the internationally recognized, India's come way down in the freedom index there. So
freedom of speech index.
Freedom of speech, yeah. It's come way down now. I'm hoping things will change, but in 24, this year's general election, I fear that the BJP will come back. Perhaps, I hope, with not as big a majority, but they could get an even greater majority, and there'll be less freedom of speech after that, I think. Yeah. What worries me most is this Hindutva agenda, and the way that Muslims and the minorities are becoming second-class citizens. We're losing the kind of values that we had at independence, and which people like like Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru and others, Vallabhbhai Patel also, who's an icon now, but he was all for, the minorities having as much say in the running of the country. Nobody was regarded as a second-class citizen. So those values are going now.
So Rahul, we took a break, but we are back. So to talk about your dear father, Khushwant Singh.
Yeah.
So he, in his career, he was close to Indira Gandhi and Sanjay Gandhi, and he was also supportive of the 1975 emergency. But very clearly, we know that your sister and you, maybe your mother also, were not in agreement with his thought process. So what kind of discussions happened at home?
Well, we made it pretty clear to my father that we were not happy with his, endorsement of the emergency and Indira Gandhi. And I think after 1 year of the emergency, he also, though he kept it to himself, he also was not too happy with what was going on. Anyway, he still supported Indira Gandhi. He was that kind of person, loyal to people. But then what happened was the Janata Party came into power. She lost the election, Janata Party came into power. And the Jains were put under pressure by Morarji Desai, who did not care very much for my father, partly because he had supported Indira Gandhi. And also, I think my dad had made a little bit of fun of him in one of his columns about his, not drinking alcohol and or being very critical of people who drank alcohol and, his urine therapy and all that. Anyway, the Jains were put under pressure to get rid of my dad. So my dad was virtually fired overnight. They were also worried that in his farewell editorial, my dad might write something which would be published, which would be critical of the Janata Party. Anyway, Kamath, M.V. Kamath, took over, and he was told to leave overnight, my father. That editorial was then published later on in Sunday magazine by M.J. Akbar, along with an article by me alongside it, describing what exactly happened to my father. So that is my dad. He was that kind of person, strong convictions, didn't care a damn about what anybody felt about it. I'll give you a small incident. He used to have these Santa Banta jokes, Sikh jokes at the end of his column, sent to him by mainly Sardars. He used to edit them and publish those Santa Banta jokes, and the Sikhs love to have jokes about themselves. He got a letter one day, I was in the house then, he gets a letter, very formal letter from the SGPC, which is the Shromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee, the highest authority of the Sikhs. And that letter said to him, please stop publishing your Santa Banta jokes. And my dad thought for a little while. He took out a postcard. He used to send people a postcard, because they used to write to him, he used to send them postcards, all that. So he was great to send hundreds of postcards every week. So in that postcard, he wrote to the SGPC just 3 words, go to hell. And he never heard from them again. So he was that kind of person. He used to also love making fun of himself. He used to show friends of his a letter which he had received, which had just the simple postal address of Khushwant Singh, Bastard, India. And he used to show it to his friend, look, even the post office knows where to find me. And that letter had got to him. Of course, it was full of abuse, that letter, because, that obviously person didn't like my dad. But he used to make fun of himself. He used to be outrageous, and that's the kind of person he was.
Fantastic. Thank you for all these anecdotes. So, see, your father was born in undivided India, in Pakistan, Punjab of today.
Yeah.
And he even worked as a lawyer in the Lahore High Court for 8 full years before independence. So, it's natural that his thoughts of Indo-Pakistan friendship were very strong. So can you dwell on his innermost feelings, what he felt about bhaichara between the two countries?
Yeah, my father qualified as a lawyer in London University. He qualified as a barrister, and he went back to Lahore, which is where he was, born, and he was born and brought up in a village in Pakistan, then undivided India. But now Pakistan, and then he started practicing law from Lahore. He also taught law at Government College Lahore. He started practicing law there, but he became disillusioned with the law. And then India got its independence. They were looking for people in the foreign service. He applied for the foreign service and got in and became a diplomat. But his love, even after independence, we had to leave Lahore when the riots broke out, and we bundled up in a car and sent to Delhi, where my grandfather lived. My father's father, Soba Singh, later knighted by the British, Sir Soba Singh. So we went to his house. We thought we were just going for 2 or 3 days until the riots were over. Of course, we never came back again. And so my father was posted to London first and Canada. But despite the bitterness of the partition, he wrote a famous book on his experiences of partition called Train to Pakistan. He was only in his 20s when he wrote that book. Again, it became a bestseller, was made into a film. But his love for Pakistan and where it had been born and brought up always remained. He even left his house in Lahore, a large house, which his father had bought for him. He left it to a very close Pakistani lawyer friend called Manzoor Kadir, who later on became the foreign minister of Pakistan, actually. But he left it to that friend of his, and with the instruction that all the books, there were lots and lots of books there, should be given to the Pakistan government to put in a library. And Manzoor Kadir prevented that house from being looted, and he stayed in that house. It's now been made into a multi-story building. But as I said, his love for Lahore always, love for Pakistan and for his village in Sargodha always remained. And he went back many years later, and he got a huge reception, welcome at his village, and he was tearful during that time. And there is a friend of his called Fakir Ijazuddin, who became a friend later on. And after my father died, he came to India and asked for a part of the ashes of my father. And we gave them to him, and he went back to Pakistan, went to the village, went to the school where my father had gone to school, and he put a plaque there with my father's name, just saying simply that Khushwant Singh had studied in this school, and he used those ashes with the cement to put that plaque in the wall of this school. And I saw that many years later, that plaque is still there on the walls of that school.
Your father was also very disciplined about time. And so we read a lot about he enjoyed his evening whiskey only between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m.
Yeah.
So what kind of conversation do you recall from one of those, 7 p.m. meetings?
Well, if anybody rang him up, especially if it was a Pakistani, rang him up and said they wanted to meet him, the doors were open. But he didn't like anybody just turning up at the house without an appointment. In fact, even now there's a notice there, still we've kept it, which says, please do not ring the bell unless you are expected. So only if when somebody had rung up, but he had open house from 7 to 8, exactly 7 to 8. If anybody came after 7 o'clock when they were asked to come at 7, he would turn them away. And at 8 o'clock exactly, which was his dinner time, he used to say, now it's my dinner time, please, you must go. I must also tell you that on my 50th birthday, I invited Rajiv Gandhi to come to my 50th birthday. I was staying with my dad at Sujan Singh Park. And Rajiv had become a little bit of a friend of mine because we were both at Cambridge together. So Rajiv was then out of power and the election was going to take place quite soon and he was expected to come back into power. Anyway, I just took a chance and I rang up his secretary and invited him for dinner. The secretary was very guarded, said, oh, we'll see and all that. And then just before my dinner party, very small dinner party, Mani Shankaraya was another invitee, but only about 10 or 12 people had invited. Just before that dinner party, the security people turned up. So I knew that Rajiv Gandhi was coming. So he came and my father and mother were also there. And my dad, exactly at about 8 o'clock or so, I asked Rajiv Gandhi, he said he's only coming for a drink. I asked him, Mr. Gandhi, I addressed him as Mr. Gandhi, though I knew him quite well. Mr. Gandhi, would you like to stay on for dinner? He says, of course I'm going to stay on for dinner. But my dad, it was his bedtime and he said, he made a rather moving speech to Rajiv Gandhi. He said, Mr. Gandhi, you know, all the members of your family, including your mother and brother, have been to this house. But you're coming for the first time and I'm honored to have you as my guest here. But now it's my bedtime. You stay on, but I'm going off to bed. And he went off to bed. And sadly, only a few months later, Rajiv was assassinated.
So 1991.
Yeah.
One final question.
Yeah.
Any one anecdote, a very cherished moment with your dad, between the two of you?
I'll tell you one true story. You mentioned about his insistence on timing. If he invited somebody to come over at a particular time, he expected them to come at that time. The BBC wanted to interview him, camera, sound equipment. In those days, you had, complicated cameras and sound equipment and all that. He gave them a time of 6 o'clock before his, drinks time and all that. At 6 o'clock, my dad was waiting. I was there with him. No BBC. At 6:30, the doorbell rings. And my dad says to me, if that is the BBC, please tell them they are not welcome. So I opened the door very embarrassed, and there were all the BBC cameramen, sound people, person who was going to interview and all that. And and I said to them, you were given an appointment for 6 o'clock. It's now 6:30. And my father said, you are not welcome. I don't think that had ever happened to a BBC team. So they started saying, please, we've come all the way, this thing, we've got all this equipment and all that. I said, sorry. My dad said, no interview. So they had to. So that stays in my mind about how he didn't care how important, who they were. If they were not sticking to their time, they were turned away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for, this lovely interview.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.